The COVID-19 pandemic perhaps represents so far the biggest test of robustness and resilience of our economic and financial system. In the extraordinary circumstances that we face today, history could provide us with some use in respect of the role of central banks. Guided by the age-old wisdom summarized in Bajort's dictum that ascribes the role of the lender of the last resort to the central bank, the Reserve Bank of India has taken a number of important historic measures to protect our financial system and support the real economy in the current crisis. While the eventual success of our policy responses will be known only after some time, they appear to have worked so far. And that gives us a lot of satisfaction, and that inspires us also to take further measures. While reiterating our intent and dedication to steer the economy through the crisis, I would like to highlight certain key aspects of our policy measures. So what I propose to do is to sort of very briefly highlight some of the measures that we have taken, some of the approaches, our broad approach during the current crisis, and with special reference to the aspect of financial stability. Because as you know, the central bank, while looking after aspects of reviving growth, supporting the measures being taken by the government in terms of carrying out necessary changes and announcing necessary measures in areas that are in the domain of the Reserve Bank. But at the same time, above all, the Reserve Bank is responsible for the financial stability of the country. And this is one area where I think the Reserve Bank and the financial institutions, and in particular the banks, will have to work in close coordination and in close cooperation to ensure the stability of the financial system in the country. Now, let me first briefly touch upon the monetary policy measures which we have taken. As you would be already aware, the RBI was already in an accommodative stance before the outbreak of COVID-19. And from February 2019 onwards, on cumulative basis, we had cut the repo rate by 135 basis points till the onset of the COVID-19. Now, consistent, and that was done mainly to sort of to tackle the slowdown in growth, which was visible at that time, and we had elaborately touched upon it in our MPC resolutions. Now, consistent with this policy stance, when liquidity conditions, we had also kept them in ample surplus. The lagged impact of these measures was about to propel a cyclical turnaround in economic activity when COVID-19 brought with it calamitous misery, endangering both lives and livelihood of people. Given the uncertainty regarding the evolution of COVID curve, it was absolutely critical to anticipate the emerging economic risks and take proactive monetary policy actions of sizable magnitude using comprehensive range of policy instruments. The fast-changing macroeconomic environment and the deteriorating outlook for growth necessitated off-cycle meetings of the Monetary Policy Committee, first in March and then again in May 2020. The MPC has decided, as you would be aware, to cumulatively cut the policy repo rate by 115 basis points. So from February 2019, the total rate cut that RBI has undertaken is 250 basis points. Now, we also focused on liquidity measures. I would not like to go into the details of that. They're already in the public domain. They're known to you. But I would like to just say that both conventional and unconventional monetary and liquidity measures by the Reserve Bank were undertaken, and they were aimed at, number one, restoring market confidence, number two, alleviating liquidity stress, number three, easing financial conditions, number five, unfreezing credit markets, and number six, augmenting the flow of financial resources to those in need for productive purposes. The broader objective was to mitigate the risks to growth outlook while preserving financial stability. The liquidity measures announced by the RBI since February 2020 aggregate to about rupees 9.57 lakh crore, which is equivalent to 4.7% of 2019-20 nominal GDP. So about 4.7% of the GDP. That is the kind of liquidity measures which we have announced from February this year. Now, heading into the pandemic, the financial system of the country was in a much improved position, owing mainly to the various regulatory and supervisory initiatives which the Reserve Bank had undertaken. We had put in place a framework for resolution of stressed assets, the 7th June circular, and the various other measures that Reserve Bank had undertaken, in addition to implementing multiple measures to strengthen credit discipline and to reduce credit concentration. For 5 years between 2015-16 to 2019-20, the government had infused a total of rupees 3,08,000 crore in public sector banks. As a result of efforts by both Reserve Bank and the Government of India, the overhang of stressed assets in the banking system had declined and capital position has considerably improved. As per available numbers, some of which are provisional at this point of time, the overall capital adequacy ratio of scheduled commercial banks stood at 14.8% in March 2020 compared to 14.3% in March 2019. The CRAR of public sector banks had also improved from 12.2% in March 19 to 13% in March 20. The gross NPA ratio and the net NPA ratio of the scheduled commercial banks stood at 8.3% and 2.9% in March 2020, which is basically a kind of a marginal improvement over 9.1% gross NPA and 3.7% net NPA as on March 19. The provision coverage ratio had also improved from 60.5% in March 19 to 65.4% in March 20. The gross NPA of the NBFCs, on the other hand, they stood at 6.4% and that was the gross NPA was 6.4% and the net NPA was 3.2%. There was a slight marginal deterioration because, as you know, post IL&FS, there was a big impact on the NBFC sector, but notwithstanding that, we were constantly engaged with the NBFCs. So therefore, there was marginal deterioration. Similarly, their CRAR, the aggregate CRAR of the NBFC sector also marginally declined from 20.1% to 19.6% during 1920. What is important to notice here is that when the IL&FS crisis hit the economy, there were apprehensions that the damage to the NBFC sector could be even more. But because of the measures which Reserve Bank undertook, I have mentioned it earlier that we were constantly engaged with, we were very closely monitoring 50 top NBFCs, and thereafter we started monitoring totally 100 NBFCs. And we had ensured that from June of 2019, the system liquidity was adequately surplus. So all these helped the situation. Now, an important objective of Reserve Bank supervisory initiative, let me just highlight a little bit on what we are doing currently under supervision, because in a crisis like COVID, when there is a big challenge to financial stability, now growth is definitely important. That is one of topmost priority for the Reserve Bank. At the same time, equal priority has to be given, or perhaps greater priority, I would say equal priority. Let me not sort of try to say this is more important and this is less important, but equal priority has to be given to the aspect of financial stability. So therefore, the supervision mechanism of RBI also has been receiving close attention. The important objective of RBI supervisory initiative has been to put in place systems and structures to identify, assess, and proactively mitigate or manage the vulnerabilities among the financial institutions. During the last 1 year, based on assessment of events which had the potential to pose a threat to financial stability, the Reserve Bank has in fact reorganized its supervisory functions with an objective of establishing a holistic approach to regulation and supervision. These measures, they basically aim at effectively addressing the potential systemic risks that could arise due to possible supervisory or regulatory arbitrage and information asymmetry. Further, a calibrated approach has been designed to provide the required modularity and scalability to the supervision functions to ensure better focus on risky institutions and practices, and to enhance capability to conduct horizontal or thematic studies across supervisory entities. As a fulcrum of the calibrated supervisory approach, the Reserve Bank has strengthened its off-site surveillance mechanism. Now, this is very important. Internally, we have, based on technology, thanks to the the CRILIC system and the other technology tools that we have at our disposal, we have strengthened our internal off-site surveillance mechanism to identify emerging risks and assess the vulnerabilities across the supervised entities for timely action. We are also working towards strengthening the supervisory market intelligence capabilities of Reserve Bank with the help of both personal and technological intelligence. Specialized handling of weak institutions at the Reserve Bank now helps in closure monitoring and successful resolution of such entities in a non-disruptive manner. The timely and successful resolution of the Yes Bank is an example. After exhausting all other options, all other possible options, and with a view to safeguard the interest of depositors and ensure stability of the financial system, we decided to intervene at an appropriate time when the net worth of the bank, that is Yes Bank, was still positive. The Yes Bank reconstruction scheme forged a unique public-private partnership between leading financial entities of India, and it was implemented in very quick time, which helped the bank's revival, successfully safeguarded the interest of the depositors, and ensured financial stability. I wish to, at this point of time, compliment the State Bank of India for providing leadership to this initiative. With regard to the Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank, the Reserve Bank is engaged with all stakeholders to find a workable solution, as losses are very high, eroding deposits by more than 50%. With regard to NBFC's active engagement with stakeholders was found to be extremely useful. I have just mentioned about that. Now, considering their size and interconnectedness, the Reserve Bank has taken a number of measures which are already in the public domain, so I don't want to elaborate on that. But in the case of UCBs, let me just touch upon a few points. Special efforts are being made towards a risk-based and proactive supervisory approach to identify weaknesses in their operations as early as possible. An early warning system with a stress testing framework has also been formed for timely recognition of weak banks for appropriate action. Formation of an umbrella organization has also been approved. The exposure limits of UCBs have also been brought down, and priority sector targets have also been revised substantially to ensure that the UCBs lend specifically and more to the sectors for which the UCBs, the urban cooperative banks, have been formed and for which they are operating. The recent amendments to the Reserve Bank of India Act and the Banking Regulation Act will facilitate RBI's supervision process with respect to NBFCs and the urban cooperative banks respectively. Now, let me just come to the aspect of RBI's response to the pandemic. As part of response to the pandemic, the RBI has undertaken a series of measures which are already in public domain, as I have already said. Besides, Reserve Bank's focus was also to ensure that contingency response to COVID-19 was implemented by all regulated entities swiftly. Now, as early as 16th March, in fact, when COVID was just about setting in into India, we had written to all banks and other supervised entities, financial institutions which are regulated by the RBI. We had written to them to prepare their business continuity plans and to have mechanisms and measures in place to deal with the emerging challenges. All entities were advised, all entities, including banks, were advised to assess the impact of COVID-19 on their balance sheet, asset quality, and liquidity, and take immediate contingency measures to manage their risks. And that we did it March 16th. Now, as the lockdown has obstructed our on-site supervisory examination to an extent, we are further enhancing our off-site surveillance mechanism. And the objective of the off-site surveillance mechanism is to smell the distress, if any, and be able to initiate preemptive actions. This requires use of market intelligence inputs on an ongoing engagements with financial institutions on possible or potential vulnerabilities. The off-site assessment work, which takes into account macro and micro variables, is more analytical and forward-looking and aimed at identifying vulnerable sectors, borrowers, as well as supervised entities. While multi-pronged approach adopted by the Reserve Bank has provided a cushion from the immediate impact of the pandemic on banks, the medium-term outlook is uncertain and depends on COVID-19 curve. Policy action for the medium term would require a careful assessment, and this is very important. Policy action for medium term would require a careful assessment of how the crisis unfolds, building buffers and raising capital. I repeat, building buffers and raising capital will be very crucial, not only to ensure credit flow, but also to build resilience in the financial system. We have very recently, that is on 19th June and again on 1st July, advised all banks and NBFCs that to sort of analyze and do COVID stress test and analyze the impact of COVID-19 on their balance sheet, asset quality, liquidity, profitability, and capital adequacy for the financial year 2020-21 and also for the next year. Based on the outcome of such stress testing, banks and non-banking financial companies have been advised to work out possible mitigating measures, including capital planning, capital raising, and contingency liquidity planning, among others. The idea is to ensure continued credit supply to different sectors of the economy and maintain financial stability. So essentially what we are saying is that every financial institution, and in particular the banks, they have to do a COVID stress test, and I'm aware that many of the banks have already initiated this exercise, and each bank is expected to undertake this COVID stress test, identify what kind of vulnerabilities they have, what kind of challenges they are likely to encounter, identify the vulnerable points, and raise capital in time. I think that is very crucial at the moment, and that is something which the banks are expected to give topmost priority, and I'm aware that many banks have already started this process. Now, going forward, there are certain stress points in the financial system which would require constant regulatory and policy attention to mitigate the risks. It is not just regulatory and policy monitoring, or it's not only sufficient that the RBI is vigilant and watchful. It is equally or perhaps more important that the banks and other financial institutions are even more watchful of the emerging vulnerabilities and the challenges. The economic impact of the pandemic due to lockdown and anticipated post-lockdown compression in economic growth may result in higher non-performing assets and capital erosion of the banks. A recapitalization plan for public sector banks and private sector banks has therefore become absolutely necessary. While NBFC sector as a whole may still look resilient, the redemption pressure on NBFCs and mutual funds also need close monitoring. Increasing share of bank lending to NBFCs and the continuing crunch in market-based financing faced by NBFCs and HFCs also needs to be watched very carefully. Now, while I said that, the key takeaway here is not just that there is possibility of increasing vulnerability or that there is possibility of rising NPAs. That is something which is evident, it is obvious. When a natural calamity happens, when there is flood, when there is cyclone, when there is disruption due to natural calamity or other such incidents, naturally the repayment activity, the repayment behavior or the repayment capacity of certain borrowers get impacted, and that does impact the NPA position of banks. So in a situation like COVID-19, naturally there will be some consequences for the NPA position of the banks. But what I would like to emphasize here is that this is not really the key takeaway. This is obvious. The key takeaway from what I am saying is how we as a system, how the banks and other financial entities deal with this challenge, how they respond to this challenge. In such situations, as I have already said, I think it's become a lot more important that the banks will have to improve their governance, the banks will have to sharpen their risk management skills, and the banks will have to raise capital in an anticipatory basis instead of waiting for a situation to arise in advance, and proactively it is necessary banks, both public sector and private sector banks, build up adequate capital buffers. So this is the takeaway. The key takeaway is not that there could be rise in NPA. The key takeaway is how the banks are responding. The key takeaway is the need, as I said, to focus more on governance, focus more on risk management, and focus more on raising capital and building up buffers. The global financial crisis of 2008 and 9 and the COVID-19 pandemic have in fact dispelled the notion that tail risks to the financial system will materialize only rarely. The probability disruption of risk events has much fatter tails than we think. Shocks to the financial system, dubbed as once in a lifetime events, seem to be more frequent, and even more frequent than once in a decade. Accordingly, the minimum capital requirements, and this is again I am reiterating this point because of its importance. Accordingly, the minimum capital requirement of banks which are calibrated based on historical loss events may no longer be considered sufficient enough to absorb the losses. Meeting the minimum capital requirement is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for financial stability. Hence, it is imperative that the approach to risk management in banks should be in tune with the realization of more frequent, varied, and bigger risk events than in the past. Banks have to remember the old saying that care and diligence bring luck. To paraphrase Oscar Wilde, being caught unprepared in the face of a shock may be regarded as a misfortune, but to be caught unawares more than once may be a sign of carelessness. Now, I'm just sounding this, and I'm quite sure that the banks, especially our very close interaction with the banks, NBFCs and other financial entities, based on that, I can say with confidence that our banking system, our financial system is capable of rising to the occasion and meeting this challenge of ensuring credit flow and at the same time ensuring the robustness of their balance sheets. Notwithstanding the numerous steps already taken, there is always room for improvement to address several issues that may emerge in the medium to long term. These issues are common to NBFCs and other financial intermediaries as they are to the banks. The supervisory approach of the Reserve Bank is to further strengthen its focus on developing financial institutions' ability to identify and undertake measures to mitigate the risks. To strengthen the internal defenses, higher emphasis is now being given on causes of weaknesses than on symptoms. We are engaged constantly with the banks, and we are sort of trying to ensure that the banks build up their own internal frameworks and arrangements to deal with this situation. We are placing special emphasis on assessment of business model, governance, and assurance functions. Supervised entities generally tend to focus more on business aspects, even to the detriment of governance aspects and assurance functions. This is noticed sometimes. I mean, there has been a lot of improvement in the recent years, but still we see this in certain entities, and that needs attention. Now, the thrust of our approach is to improve the risk compliance, the governance culture of the financial institutions. In this regard, the Reserve Bank has recently released a discussion paper on governance in commercial banks with the objective to align the current regulatory framework with global best practices while being mindful of the context of the domestic financial system. The main emphasis of the discussion paper is to encourage separation of ownership from management. While the owners focus more on return on their investment, the management should focus more on protecting the interest of all stakeholders. The board, on its part, should provide overall direction and should build up the organizational culture and the value system in the country, and should put in place a broad framework for risk management and risk mitigation. And going forward, the Reserve Bank proposes to extend these principles of good governance to the large-sized NBFCs in due course. Now, I would like to conclude by talking briefly about the way forward. Now, despite substantial impact of the pandemic in our daily lives, the financial system of the country, including all payment systems and financial markets, are functioning without any hindrance. The Indian economy has started showing signs of getting back to normalcy in response to the staggered easing of restrictions. It is, however, still uncertain when the supply chains will be restored fully, how long will it take for demand conditions to normalize, and what kind of durable effects the pandemic will leave behind on our potential growth. Targeted and comprehensive reform measures already announced by the government should help in supporting the country's potential growth. Possibly in a vastly different post-COVID environment, reallocation of factors of production within the economy and innovative ways of expanding economic activity could lead to some rebalancing and emergence of new growth drivers. The policy measures, that is monetary, fiscal, regulatory, and structural reforms, provide the enabling conditions for a speedier recovery in the economic activity while minimizing the near-term disruptions. The need of the hour is to restore confidence, preserve financial stability, revive growth, and recover stronger. At the central bank, we strive to maintain the balance between preserving financial stability, maintaining the banking system's soundness, and sustaining economic activity. Post-containment of COVID-19, a very careful trajectory has to be followed in orderly unwinding of counter-cyclical regulatory measures. And please note this point very carefully. I am saying post-containment of COVID-19. So there is no need to assume that we are going to initiate withdrawal of the measures or rolling back of the measures that we have announced. That's not what I'm indicating. I'm saying post-containment of COVID-19, a very careful trajectory has to be followed in orderly unwinding of counter-cyclical regulatory measures, and the financial sector should return to normal functioning without relying on the regulatory relaxations as the new norm. The Reserve Bank is making continuous assessment of the changing trajectory of financial stability risks and upgrading its own supervisory framework to ensure that financial stability is preserved. Banks and financial intermediaries have to be ever vigilant and substantially upgrade their capabilities with respect to, as I have already said, governance, assurance functions, and risk culture. It's true that the pandemic poses a challenge of epic proportions. However, human grit, manifesting through collective efforts, intelligent choices, and innovation, will tremendously help us to come out of the present crisis. Mahatma Gandhi had said, "The future depends on what you do today." I have presented a bird's eye view of the resolutions that the Reserve Bank has taken currently to combat this unprecedented situation. I am confident that these will complement the measures undertaken by the government in achieving our policy objectives. Along with tireless efforts of thousands of people and the undying spirit of our populace, I am optimistic that these policy actions will yield the desired results.